the entertainment manager was an old comedian, and he said, have you died much on stage? And I said, yeah, a little bit. He said, that's good. He said, you need to die a lot on stage. And I said, why? And he said, because he said, you'll lose the fear of it. The only way to lose the fear of it is to experience it. And he said, it's a little bit like a boxer. He said, you won't see any good boxer who hasn't been punched in the face, because they have to realise that it doesn't actually hurt that much to get punched by a boxing glove. And if it does hurt, the next day they're all right. And the bruises go, and you can't be a good boxer if you're frightened of being punched, because you'll just stay there like that. And it's true. You can't fake confidence. You can't pretend you're confident.
John Archer, welcome to Behind the Secrets. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Yes. Just back from Magic Live, a little bit jet lagged.
If you tell us that, it's going to date the podcast.
Is it? All right. I'm just back from
Magic Live 2026?
Midwest Magic Convention 2087.
That's it. Wow, what happens in the future?
I got the Lifetime Achievement Award. It was very nice.
Yay! Oh my God, congrats. I knew it. That's why we got you on today, to celebrate this enormous achievement.
98 years old and I finally get it. There you go.
So you've been called one of the best comedy magicians in the UK. How do you feel with that title?
Well, I think it was probably my mother that said it, so it doesn't count too much. But I don't know. Just all this, putting people in boxes and stuff. It can go to your head, can't it? So some people say, "Are you a mentalist? Are you a comedy magician?" And I just sort of go, "I'm just me." And if some people think I'm great, that's lovely. And, you'll find a lot of people who hate me if you dig around. We're all.
How deep? Is it a shallow dig or is it a deep? Is it a committed deep?
No, it isn't. In fact, you wouldn't even need a spade. Probably just a rake. You'd find me. Wait.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a fork.
Maybe even that. Yeah. It's very nice and flattering, but I try not to believe it.
Yeah.
Because there's people like Matt King and David Williamson around, and they're amazing and brilliant and hilarious, and lots of other people too. There's lots of great magicians and comedians around the world. And the other thing is, it can be a little bit divisive because we're all on the same team. We're all, we're not competing against each other. We're competing against other entertainment forms. Really, we're not competing against other comedy magicians or other magicians. We're competing against, theatre, and we're competing against singers and stand-up comedians and all that talk. Those are the people who we're not trying to beat, but we're trying to be equalled with and be seen the same as. So,
yeah,
it's very nice and it's flattering, but I try not to believe it. Or
okay.
I do have imposter syndrome. I do sort of. I hang out with great magicians and I still sort of wonder why I'm sat with them, sort of thing. I'm sat with all these amazing magicians. I always think that I'm winging it, and, it's like the king's new clothes. Eventually somebody's going to realise he's just talking nonsense.
All right, well, when you get your Lifetime Achievement Award, everything will change. That's the moment.
Yeah, well, even then I'll go, are you sure?
Who's this for? So was comedy always part of your magic, or did comedy evolve into magic or mentalism as a combo over time?
It's always been there. I've never performed magic without comedy, really. In the early days, it started off. I was in some bands and some music duos. I was in a couple of duos, one called Take Two, one called Fresh Fish. And then before that, I was in a few bands. I was always doing cracking jokes between songs. So I suppose I was doing a bit of comedy before the magic. And when I was at school, I was sort of always the joker, desperate, trying to make friends by being funny. So I suppose the comedy came a little bit first. But actually, once I started performing magic, the comedy was always with it. So when I was in the duos, I eventually started, saying to the guys, the two people I was with, when I was in duos, I'd start saying, maybe I could do a little trick between that song, and I'd do Tossed Out Deck or something, or I'd do Brainwave, some basic sort of card trick between songs. But I would always present it comedically.
Yeah.
And then I'd sort of the duos, we were sort of bouncing comedy off each other as well. So yeah, the comedy's always been there, really.
That's good. How do you do comedy magic without making it like cheesy comedy? Because we all know that there is some cheesy comedy magic that exists.
There is, yeah. I think the secret is to avoid cheesiness. But yeah, it's hard. It's really hard doing comedy magic. But it's hard doing comedy magic well. And, you know, we do see a lot of people who just don't quite pull it off because either the challenge is to serve both equally. The challenge is to do strong magic and still serve the magic. Don't belittle the magic. Still have those wow moments. But equally, try and be very, very funny as well. The challenge is to know when you pull off the comedy, the moments when you've got to serve the magic and say, right, this moment is about that. So you do have to have, not serious moments, but you have moments where you just ease off the laughs. To stress a point, it might be you want it to be clear that something was empty before something appears in it. So if you do gags around that too much, it'll get lost that object was empty before something appeared in it. Or, you know, if it's really important that a deck was examined and is normal, if you're gagging and riffing all around that moment, that'll get forgotten. So you've got to know when it's important to pull off, which is difficult because, especially if you do a comedy club, you become immediately aware that you're not getting laughs. Much more than anywhere else is when you're in a comedy club, you realise that they are just there for laughs. They're not there for magic. And so as soon as you start pulling off to do process, you go flip. So it's like trying to just inject all comedy as much as you can, but still have those moments where you serve the magic. And it's really hard, and I think that's what, if people do get things wrong, it's then, you know, and, you know, I've mentioned Matt King and Williamson, but they're my two favourites. And there are others as well, you know, there are other greats, Zabrecki and, you know, young guys coming up as well, Nick DeFat, Derek Hughes, and, you know, there's loads of great ones out there, but Williamson and Matt King, you know, they've got it down to a fine art that you rarely feel like they're pulling off the comedy, but they are at certain moments. They're just making sure that the magic points are hit. Yeah.
And if you're doing a comedy club, are you doing more comedy, less magic? And if you're doing a magic audience, are you doing more magic and less comedy? I
don't have different routines.
Okay. Wow.
I say I don't have different routines. There are certain tricks I wouldn't do in a comedy club because there aren't enough laughs in it.
Yeah.
So when I do a comedy club, I try and choose routines that have more laughs in them, and I will, and I might speed up a little bit on the, you know, on the processy type things. But yeah, it's there's definitely certain routines that I wouldn't do in a comedy club. My blindfold routine, which I haven't done for years anyway, but you know, if I brought that back, excuse me, if I brought that back, I don't think I'd do it in a comedy club because it is quite process heavy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's more about choice of material than different material.
Yeah. Is it true that you were the first ever Penn Teller faller in their pilot episode?
I was. Look, in fact, just wait there. I'm coming back. I want to show you something. Now, everybody's got one of these. I've all got one of these. Everybody's got one of these. But I did the UK version, and they didn't give these out on the UK. I did the pilot episode of the first season in the UK. And I did get one of these. And when I was in the US, I was at a party at Matt King's house. Sorry to drop names. And
I'm expecting like an onslaught of more names. We've got...
No, well, Penn, I can if you like. I can tell you everybody was there. But Penn was there specifically. And I was chatting, sort of saying, you know, some people have said they were the first person to fool them who weren't on the show or did rehearsals and blah, blah, blah. And I said I never got a trophy. And then this arrived a few months later, and written at the bottom it says, is that the right way around?
Yeah.
First fooler. There you are, John Archer first.
Nice.
Yeah, 2010, season 1. Yeah, so that was nice to get that. But yeah,
what does it feel like the moment when you're like, oh, I've fooled them? What is that?
Well, I think it felt very different for me, obviously, because nobody had. And when we heard the show was happening, it's very different to now. If you hear the show's happening now and you get asked on it, you'd be a fool not to go on it, and because they're going to treat you well and you're going to get a great clip for, you know, social media and everything else. But when they asked us, I said 2010, none of the magicians in the UK knew what the show was about. BGT at the time, Britain's Got Talent, sorry, they were being a bit harsh with magicians, and sort of, Simon Cowell's warm now and all of a sudden he loves magicians, but he hated them then. And so we all thought, is it going to be like that? Is it going to be we do a trick and then we get told, oh, that was terrible, you did that wrong and this was the method? And we didn't know. We had a sort of a promise that they were going to be nice to us, but it's Penn and Teller, and they have a bit of a reputation of if they don't want to be nice, they won't be. They're very honest, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. So when I went on, and I think I was maybe fourth or fifth on, and nobody had fooled them, we'd all have this conversation of, well, you can't fool Penn and Teller, especially Teller at the time. Penn is much more educated on magic now than he was then. I think he's really got into the magic a lot more than he was. He was sort of much more sort of the mouthpiece, and Teller was the magic expert, and I think they're sort of up there together now. But we all thought, you can't fool Teller, he must have read everything, he must have seen everything. So I was in genuine shock when I fooled them. I mean, Johnny Thompson, who was around, God bless him then, and he was the magical advisor on the show, and I'd worked with him, I'd done a week in Vegas with him, and I'd done various things with him, so I considered him a friend. And he'd sort of said to me, oh, you should do your magic square routine, because he'd seen that and he thought it was very funny. And I didn't realise what the show was. And I thought, no, it's all about fooling them. I mean, now I realise it isn't all about fooling them. And maybe I could have just done the magic square routine and had a stronger comedic piece. But I sort of thought, no, I want to do the envelope routine. Only because it was the only thing I had that I knew was a very original method that, that possibly you wouldn't have heard of. So yeah. I went with that, but yeah, it was a big shock.
So Britain's Got Talent is a very high-pressure environment. What was your game plan going in, and how did it roll out the way that you imagined?
Well, I didn't imagine anything. Britain's Got Talent was very different to Foolers, because Foolers I went in and it was sort of, I wanted to, have a good piece and, get some TV exposure, everything else. But BGT, I went on BGT really as a challenge to myself. It was, I'd been asked to do it for a while and turned it down, and then I got asked to do it again. And Russ Stevens was involved at this point, and Russ has sort of turned around how magic is perceived on BGT, and he's worked with all of the magic acts since before I went on it. So early 2000s, I would think maybe 2007. I'm not sure when he started. And he sort of said I should do it. And I was genuinely worried, scared that I would get, just slated or, some harsh comments like you're a bit old-fashioned, or I didn't know what was going to happen. But there was that thing of, face your fears. And I thought, I've got nothing to lose. I've sort of made my mark happily with, with who I want to make my mark with. And I thought it'll be good to challenge myself. And also I thought it'd be good. I thought it'd be nice for my family to see me on there and, see me on a Saturday night show. And I just thought, I'm going to do it. It was just a challenge to myself, really, that very first. I thought I just want to get through the audition and get 4 yeses, and that was I would have been happy with that.
Yeah. Really.
So after that, it was all a bonus. I didn't really, expect to get to the final. I wasn't really that confident I'd get to the semi-final, but it was all about just challenging myself, facing my fears, and, do something that scares you type thing, really.
Yeah. From what I saw on TV, you really hammered Simon Cowell with your jokes.
Yeah, do you know what? They encouraged that. I had sort of a 2-hour meeting with a writer that writes for Anton Deck on the show, and he's a great writer. And I was sharing some of my jokes that I already had in my act, and he was saying, "Oh yeah, you could say that about Simon." So really,
because I was like, when I was watching it, I was like, "Oh my god, he's going again and again," and you can see Simon's like expression. It's like, happy at first, and then he's like, kind of like, "What? Why does he keep like targeting me?"
But you know what? I mean, sort of the audiences love that in the studio. It's live, and there's 3,000 people in the audience, and the audience are loving that, and the other judges are loving it. And I think deep down, Simon knows what is good TV, and he knows that it's good to look angry. He knows that it's good to, he knows how to react. He knows to, when to play the sympathy thing, when to play the annoyed thing. So yeah, I sort of wasn't too worried, and also I knew it was live. I mean, my audition was recorded, and I made a lot of jokes at David Walliams' expense, and he was great with it. He was laughing. Actually, I wasn't disappointed, but I was, what's the word? I suppose disappointed is the word. Slightly disappointed that my audition was edited so strongly. It was edited right down. It was about 5 minutes, and I think they edited it down to about maybe a minute and a half, because my audition, went as well as, if not better than, that semi-final piece. But I think, for whatever reason, that they edited me down. I was in the very last show before the final, so I had no time to sort of play off that audition piece and put it on social media, because the following week I was in the final, even though I'd filmed that audition piece months before. So I was a little bit disappointed, because I had a lot of sort of good laughs and a lot of funny stuff that was cut out. But when you go on a show like that, you've got to realise you're a tin of beans on a shelf in a supermarket. You're just an ingredient for them making the show. You're not, they're not there to make you a star. They're there to make a great show, and whoever becomes a star out of it is a bit of a byproduct, really.
A tin of beans. That's such a UK.
Well, you are.
That is like such a UK expression.
Well, you are. You're just an ingredient in their show.
Yeah.
You just, I mean, they do care about they treated me very well, but you've got to be aware that you are just, you're just another prop in their big show, and they watch, and the ones that are getting them the attention and the votes, and they start giving them a bit more attention, and you suddenly realise you're getting slightly less camera time, and somebody else who's 95 years old and sings in a home choir is getting all the attention. So you just have to live with it. If you go on knowing that, it's great, and the people who win aren't always the best, but it doesn't matter. You're in it to be seen and have fun, really.
Yeah. So every magician's journey has a couple of hilarious disasters. What are some of your when everything went pear-shaped memories?
Well, do you know what? The one I'm constantly reminded of whenever I'm with people who were there is Cuba. I did a Magic Cuba. It was a convention. I don't know how long ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago now. And sort of Bill Hers was involved, and John Stetson and John Rose, and a few people had organised it. And it was a
name dropping.
Honestly, if I told you who was there, those are the smaller names. But
I'm just going to say that every time now.
All right, okay, well, let's get it over with. So Matt King was there. Randy Pitchford was there. Who else was there? I'm going to forget them all now. Loads of names were there, and it was sort of a weekend. But it was only a small convention. There was probably, about 30 or 40 European people there, and then maybe an equivalent number of Cuban magicians. It was the first magic convention that had international one, and then managed to get permission from the American government and the Cuban government to do this exchange thing. And there were shows every night in the theatre. So Mike Caveney was there, and who else? I did loads. Anyway, names will keep coming back. Eric Mead was there. You've stopped saying name dropper. You've realised it's quite...
Because you haven't stopped name dropping since I started. You've just been on I'm just letting you finish your run.
Basically, everybody who was there was a bigger name than me. So no matter who I mentioned, is a name dropper. And there'd be gala shows on the night, and then after the gala shows, there'd be like after shows, which a lot of times were in little rooms or bars or little clubs, and most of these were like English-speaking audiences. It had been told. But I was the last performance of the last night. So there was the gala show, and then everybody was going to a nightclub for my show. And it was supposed to have been advertised as an English-speaking cabaret show. But when we got there, it was a huge nightclub with just full of young, sweaty, sexy Cubans dancing on the dance floor. Cuban jazz, lots of flashing lights, about 200 of them in this dance floor. And none of them knew that a cabaret was happening, and none of them spoke English. And then all the magicians, all these magical names, were sat up in, it was a big place, but they were sat up in a little balcony at the back. And there was a quick change act on first, which was Cuban, so they were great. There was an MC who just went nowhere, really, because nobody understood him. And then I got introduced, and I literally went on doing my act in English. Nobody understood me. Music still playing. Cubans all still dancing on the dance floor. Grinding against each other, and and me desperately. And then I was supposed to do 45 minutes. I think I did about maybe half an hour. Oof. But after about 10 or 15 minutes, I realised I was, I wasn't even dying. I was just being ignored. And I just played to that gallery up at the top, and I just decided I was just going to die with dignity. So I was just making up names of people in the audience. I was pretending they were replying to me. I was pretending to hand out envelopes to people in the audience, but nobody. But whenever I meet any of those people now, Cuba gets brought up. That was my biggest and most spectacular death in front of everybody you wouldn't want to die in front of, really.
Yeah, nice.
It's remarkable that any of them still want me as a friend.
Well, because it sounds
maybe
like
they don't. Maybe they don't. I don't know.
With the visual that you've just shared, it sounds like I can just see you here, and then there's just this sweaty nightclub, and you're just throwing envelopes out like confetti, staring at the magicians above. It sounds like you kind of like made it through in a quite heroic way.
Well, no, I don't think I was. I made it through in a hero. I was a little bit like. I was more like a Christian in a den of lions, just died gracefully, to a load of people in the audience, all with their thumbs down.
Did it mean that after that, no gig could get as bad? Was that the lowest of the votes? I don't think any gig could. It couldn't get any worse than that. I mean, I've done troop shows where the troops are drunk in Afghanistan, where there's a lot of. Well, not in Afghanistan they weren't drunk, but in Cyprus they were drunk, and they're all drunk, laddie soldiers, out for a good time, and then comedy magicians get rolled out in front of them. But that was easy compared with Cuba. I've had lots of weird things. I once had a woman walk up to me I was doing a cabaret, and it was like a cabaret, no stage, with a small baby, about maybe 4 months old, and she just gave me the baby and said, "Will you just hold my baby for a moment?" And she went to the bathroom, and I was sort of dying at that gig as well. Hardly anybody was listening to me. This woman just thought it would be funny to give me a baby. So I was stood at the microphone holding a small baby. Thankfully, the baby wasn't crying, but it was just sort of looking up at me, and I was going, "Hello." She literally, was it just to stitch you up?
I can't work it out. She seemed a bit odd. At first, I thought she was holding a doll in the audience because she was this baby. She was right in front of me. She was dressed, she had sort of hair in ribbons and sort of wear brightly coloured clothes, looking sort of a little bit sort of hippie-ish, I suppose.
Where was this gig?
It's actually where I live now, in Scarborough. I didn't live here then, I've just moved here. I didn't move here to try and find her. It's coincidental. But, so it was for a company. I'd done it the year before, just for the managers. I did it for about 20 of them, and I had a great gig, stormed it. And they said, "We want you back, but we want you to do it for the whole company, for the company." So this time it was 300 of them in a massive room with a dance floor and a bar at the back, and no chairs really. It was like cabaret. So everybody was just wandering, walking around. And I could see all the management sort of scratching their head, saying he was great last year, not realising that I was still the same, but they'd changed the whole environment, so it wasn't right for it, And when you do it for a living, you soon realise that you can die, and it's not your fault. It's just the situation. So I was sort of struggling. I wasn't completely dying. I had a group of maybe about 20 or 30 people who were, sat down within earshot and were enjoying it, but the vast majority of the room weren't. And why this woman just decided to give me a bit, I just held it and chatted to the audience. "I'll be back with you in a minute." And none of the audience seemed bothered. And then she came back and took the baby and said thank you, and went back to her seat. So I started advertising myself as
oh my god, that is the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
And babysitter is how I then advertised myself for the following year.
Oh my God. You've got a way of sharing. You've got a way of like sharing your disasters by painting them in with the picture that just brings such a clear visual of you being so awkward.
Yeah. Which is why you can understand when people say, probably one of the top comedy magicians, I know the I'm aware of all these situations. Some of these people only see me at my best. I've seen all that awkward bad stuff as well.
Oh my God, you're a classic.
Just breathe.
So speaking of disasters, what are 3 of the biggest either failures or mistakes you've made, and what are the lessons that you've learned?
Do you know what? That's hard to say for mistakes I've made. Because if I make a mistake, I quite enjoy the process of getting out of it. So,
okay, which is, I'm going to stop you. That's the comic in you.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I do stand up, and we love awkward moments because they're gold.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's a unique response that you would have.
Yeah.
To be able to go, oh, this is an opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest mistakes I make, and I still make now, is choosing the wrong person. That's still the thing that, if anything's going to go wrong, I get the wrong person up for the wrong trick. I still do the same material for the person, even though it's not quite right. So, I mean, I remember once doing my blindfold routine, which I haven't done, like I say, for a long time, because it used to have a moment where I kissed the woman in the audience. And it seemed fine at the time, and looking back I go, what was I thinking? But anyway, I know, I've forgiven myself. I don't think everybody else has, but I know, look at your shocked face. What? But I remember I got a guy up. I used to get a guy up, and then I'd say, who are you with? And get his partner up. And I got the guy up, and I'd already worked out, I'd seen who they're with, so I knew who the man and woman would be I was going to pick. But I would pretend like I didn't know, and I'd say, who you with? And he said, he said, I'm with my wife. I said, oh, she'd be great to blindfold me as well, bring her up. And he didn't sort of question it, but he just sort of stepped off the stage and grabbed her hand. She was sat near the front of the table, and he sort of brought her up on stage. And I thought, that's a bit weird. You know, I thought he's very polite. I wouldn't do that with my wife. And then I said, you come and stand over here. So she sort of I have one stood either side of me. And I had the coins. I have the coins taped on my eyes. And I said, you can check one coin to him. And then I said, you can check that one. And she went, that's going to be difficult. And I said, why? She said, I'm blind. But, I mean, I had no clue. I mean, some people you see, and you can see a bit of blindness in them, if you know what I mean. You can look at them and tell that they haven't got full sight or whatever, for various reasons. But with her, I couldn't tell at all. And so then I had this moment of like, what am I going to do? And I remember making a joke. I said, well, maybe you should do this trick. It would be much more impressive, which was a risky line to make, but she did a huge laugh, and the rest of the audience did. And I said, do you think we should get somebody else up to help? And she said, that might be better. And so we got a big round of applause. I got somebody else up. But I've had that. And magicians, we all get that. We get somebody up to help, and, we ask them to shuffle the cards and we realise they've only got one arm, or, you just get people up and you get people up in the wrong personality type. They're just, too loud, or they're too shy. You want somebody who's right for that particular trick.
Yeah.
You want somebody who's going to laugh and be comfortable, if you're teasing them about something, because as soon as they're not, the whole audience are aware. And I still make that mistake now and get people up and think, I wish I hadn't got them. Or sometimes it changes who I choose from then on. I sort of think, well, maybe a man would be better, or maybe a woman would be better for that trick. Or I try and not genderize my tricks but some do feel better if I've got a guy up, because I can just be a bit harsher with a guy than I would want to be with a woman, even though some women would be fine with it. It's how the audience perceive it. Yeah, my biggest mistake is who I choose and when I choose them.
Yeah. So, and it hasn't changed? You're still making the same mistake?
Yeah, I think I probably make that mistake less now than I used to, but it's still a mistake I make, because it's really difficult. It's really difficult. It's really difficult to tell just by looking who's right. I mean, I am as soon as I come on stage, I'm monitoring the audience, and I'm listening to the audience, and I'm watching who's making eye contact and laughing directly at me, who's, sometimes people laugh but they look away, some people laugh and look at you, sometimes people aren't laughing at certain jokes, and when you look people in the eye, they look away. So I'm watching to see who I think is having a good time, who's having too good a time, and probably, would try and make it all about them, which is fine. I don't mind it being about the audience member sometimes when they come up. And I don't mind audience members making jokes and getting laughs, but it's just about who's going to be the best to make the get the best out of the trick, really. And sometimes you want loud, and sometimes you want quiet, etc.
Yeah. What's the most surprising thing you've learned about people from performing magic and mentalism for so long, and comedy?
I think how scared people are to be in front of an audience. You get people who go, I was so glad you didn't pick me, and you go, why? Oh, I would have hated to be up there. And, you forget that a lot of people are just scared of standing in front of a crowd. Even if they don't have to say or do anything, even if they just have to stand there and hold something, it frightens a lot of people. So I think that's the biggest thing I've learned is, you've got to sort of try and reassure them. And it's difficult when you're doing comedy and you're getting laughs, not at their expense, but with them and through them, you're getting laughs. So you've got to try and acknowledge them, and just sort of the way you shake their hand and the way you smile at them and the way you nod, just to try and make them feel comfortable. It is a challenge. And I know there are some people who would say, well, don't pick on your audience at all, don't make fun of the people you've got up. And I'm not really making fun at them, I'm trying to make fun with them. And the secret to that is, I think, I do a lot of self-deprecation within my act as well, so that I try to lower my status a little bit so that I'm not seen as, maybe a lovable bully is how I would describe myself rather than a nasty bully.
What gives you more, what fills your cup up more? Is it the laughter that you get because you're like, oh yeah, that was so good? Or is it the oh my God, from the awe and the wonder element?
That's hard. I chatted with David Williamson. We'll drop that.
I was going to call that out, but I'm happy that you have created your own sound effects.
And Mac. Chatted with both of them about this. And I know that David Williams said he would happily sacrifice the magic for laughs. In other words, if a trick wasn't going to work, but he saw that he could get just some huge laughs and great comedy out of it all, he would just go down the comedy route and not worry about the trick. And I'm very close to that thinking. If I had to choose between a stand-up comedian, all I could do was comedy and no magic. I wouldn't want to choose this because my choice would be both. But if I had to choose between one or the other, either I'm just doing straight, amazing, strong magic, or I'm doing amazing, strong comedy, I would choose comedy. I think that's where my heart is. But I love them both, and I love how they work so well together. I mean, they are the same sort of type of entertainment, really. It's set up in a punchline, a magic set up at a punchline. We're setting people up and then we're surprising them. And that's why I think they go so well together. They are almost a similar type.
There's definitely that beautiful parallel of the element of surprise. 100%.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What's the best piece of advice you've received as a magician? And then what's the worst piece of advice that you've received?
The best piece of advice I received was when I first started out, sort of 30 odd years ago, and I was doing caravan parks, holiday resorts everybody stayed in caravans, which is a big thing in the UK. I don't think America, I don't know whether you have it in Australia, those sort of.
Oh, we have caravan parks. They're pretty popular. Okay.
So it's like, one of these holiday resorts, and I'd be, touring around doing entertainment at various Haven holiday parks, they were called. I remember doing one, and the entertainment manager was an old comedian. I say old, he was probably younger than I am now, but he was old to me then. And I went back to his caravan after the show, and he said, have you died much on stage? And I said, yeah, a little bit. He said, that's good. He said, you need to die a lot on stage. And I said, why? And he said, because, he said, you'll lose the fear of it. He said, and the only way to lose the fear of it is to experience it. And he said, it's a little bit like a boxer. He said, you won't see any good boxer who hasn't been punched in the face, because they have to realise that it doesn't actually hurt that much to get punched by a boxing glove. And if it does hurt, the next day they're all right. And the bruises go, and you can't be a good boxer if you're frightened of being punched, because you'll just stay there like that. You've got to be open and ready for it and be able to counterpunch. So that was the best bit of advice I ever gave, and it's true. You can't fake confidence. You can't pretend you're confident. You can't go out there and say, right, I've just started doing this. I've done 5 shows. I'm really confident, because you haven't dealt with everything and you haven't died. And you can only be confident when you've got something to be confident in. And that's confidence in the fact that you can survive these moments. So that was the best bit of advice. I love that. Yeah.
That's amazing advice.
Yeah.
How many times, just before you get to the worst, how many times have you bombed so bad that you've thought, especially in comedy, because, there's experiences where you're like, I literally cannot step on that stage again.
Oh,
especially the early days. How many of them do you reckon you've gone through?
Hundreds over the years. I mean, not less now, obviously, thankfully. I mean, if I was still dying the same amount now, I'd give up. But in the early days, I'd die a lot. I didn't die enough times for me to want to give up. I didn't die every gig. If I was dying every gig, then you've got to say to yourself, actually, am I any good at this? But certainly, I might go out and have, a death every, 2 out of 10 times. I might just, struggle. And a lot of that is learning. I was learning, I was developing who I was learning what worked for me, what didn't work for me, what rooms worked for me, what didn't work for me. I get to a gig now, and if it's a huge dance floor in front of me and the audience are a long way away and the bar's at the side rather than at the back, and, you sit and look at it and it's a high ceiling, you look at all these things and you go, it's going to be hard. Whereas in the early days, I thought it was me. And then you realise, certain corporate events you're going to go to, and, you watch the audience and you think, I'm on in an hour and they're already not listening to anything that's happening. It's just going to be a hard gig. And I still get them, and you sort of go out and think, well, I'm doing this for the money, effectively, because, you're not going to achieve. But sometimes you surprise yourself. Sometimes you go out and, you really kick hard in that first 5 minutes, and suddenly you get a bit of attention. And, I have certain things I'll do that might get attention in that first 5 minutes. And you do surprise yourself and think, wow, I can't believe that I got them. But yeah, they still happen, but not as much as they used to. And anybody starting out, if you're not dying, you need to work some harder gigs, is what I would say. Because there are easy gigs where you'll never die.
Very good advice. And then you were going to talk about the worst piece of advice anyone ever gave you.
Yeah, that's harder because I've had so much bad advice. What is the worst bit of advice I've ever given? Some people have told me I should just do stand-up comedy, and I think that's bad advice. Some people said, why don't you just be a stand-up comedian, John, and work the comedy clubs? And I've never done that. And I think it's bad advice because I'm in a small pond doing what I'm doing. There aren't a lot of comedy magicians around, and certainly aren't a lot of strong ones working professionally. Whereas if I went doing straight stand-up, I'd be against, just in England alone, I'd be against thousands of strong stand-ups, all of whom are doing very similar material. So even though it's probably well-intentioned, I think for me, it was bad advice, and I'm glad I never took it.
What lens do you have through doing comedy and incorporating comedy that you could share with, new magicians or younger magicians that they might not have from just doing magic? Whether it's pacing, timing, beats, whatever the insight is, because I know it takes a lot to do comedy well.
Yeah, I have a thing that I normally tell a lot of young comedy magicians. In fact, not just young comedy magicians, anybody who'll listen to me, really. Yeah, even all those names I've dropped, I'd tell them as well if they wanted to listen. I don't think it applies to them. But which I have a little acronym. A lot of people talk about the importance of having a director. And I think it is good to have a director. Somebody can watch you and give advice. And I've got friends who I'll ask to watch and give advice. And especially if I go and work at the Magic Castle, I have a few people there who I'll say, because I tend to work on not brand new material, but newish material there. Material that I know works, but I want to develop more. And I will say, and I will listen to their advice on how I hold something, when I do things, I'll take direction. But something that people rarely talk about is having an editor, somebody who edits what you say and what you do. And so I have an acronym when people sort of talk about their scripts, which is FIRE, FIRE. And I think when you look at your script, you should try and get rid of everything that isn't one of these four things. It should be either funny, interesting, relevant, or entertaining. And if it's not one of those four things, you don't need it. Now, if you're saying to somebody, I want you to take these cards and give them a shuffle, I mean, that might be relevant, but, you could maybe do it. You could maybe just say, shuffle those cards. Get it down to 3 words. Anything that isn't any of those things, then get rid of it. If you're going, it's great to be here. Well, so what? You know what I mean? If you're going to say that, then say it in a funny, interesting way. It might be relevant. It probably isn't relevant, but it might be relevant in the circumstances, in which case tell them why it's great to be there and make it funny or interesting or whatever. And a lot of things, sometimes in magic, especially in mentalism, there's a lot of process. If you can make that process funny, if you have to ask somebody to check a deck of cards to make sure that they're regular, try and make that point of asking them to check the cards funny and interesting, and let them know it's relevant, rather than just saying, check the cards, make sure they're all different. Add a gag at the end of that sentence, or make the process funny or interesting or different. So, I always try to say, look at everything you're saying and see if it's one of those 4 things. And if it isn't, get rid of it or change it.
Yeah. Awesome. When you're creating a routine, what comes first? Comedy, magic, outcome? What does it look like for you?
It's different every time. Sometimes it's a story I want to tell, but I don't know what the trick is to fit that story. Sometimes I have an idea for a trick, but I don't know what the presentation's going to be. I always know that I want it to be funny, so I'm never gonna start doing it till I've got the moment of where I think the funny's going to come from. And sometimes the funny might just be that I think it will be funny to have somebody up on stage and asking them about this particular thing, or getting them to do certain things. Usually the comedy comes from, with me, a lot of times it's the story, the reason why I'm doing that trick. A lot of times it's based on truth. It might be, that I genuinely have trouble with remembering something, or I might genuinely have trouble doing certain things that I might want to share. And it might be with Magic Square routine, it's like I want to try and break a world record, and the comedy comes from me just trying to do the speed. With the envelope routine, it was all about the Carolian language. That's what Teller called it, Carolian, as in Lewis Carroll, that the mixing of something versus nothing versus everything, and yours is mine and mine is yours, and all of that, playing with those words off each other and getting that script. So it was just ridiculous. That was the whole point of that routine, really.
In this era where, a lot of magic is revealed online, what do you think, or what does keep magic sacred for you?
I think keeping the secrets. I am a bit old school. I don't like, I don't worry too much about exposure online, but I don't agree with it, and I don't like the people who do it. I think we should respect, what's been kept secret for years and years by all the magicians before us. And yes, there was old magicians in the past who exposed stuff. Even David Devant, very involved in the magic circle, sort of revealed stuff. But I think out of respect for everybody who's gone before us, really, and kept it secret, and kept these books that have been written out of public domain, and we've kept them all within our own community, and we sort of sell them, really, by and large, within our own community. Yeah, you can go online and search for them, but we're not putting them up in general stores, and by and large they're not on Amazon. I think it's just respectable. When I see people just thinking, well, I can make more money exposing it, so it's a shame. I think, well, how much do you really love magic if you're happy to do that? So I'm a bit old school. I do think there is a grey area. There's a sort of there's an area in the middle where we've got to allow certain things out to encourage new people to magic. Not necessarily young kids. It might be anybody. It might be somebody who's retired and just suddenly decides to want a hobby. But I think we have to have certain things that we can sort of reveal in the right way, in the right place, that might entice them in. But I don't think that's necessarily public, because it does just lead from, small, silly kids trick that we feel like everybody knows, to bigger and bigger tricks. So that middle ground I find it harder to be definite about.
You perform a lot with Tim Vine, is that correct?
Never heard of him. Yes, yeah, I do. Tim is genuinely my best friend, I think. I've known him. I wasn't even professional. I was still a police officer when I met Tim, and he had just gone full time as a comedian, I think, for about a year. So he wasn't known at all. He was sort of just breaking out in the stand-up comedy circuit, and I was, semi-professional. Not even semi-professional, really. I was just sort of an enthusiastic amateur. And yeah, I've worked with him on everything he's done, really, to a certain extent. Whenever he's done TV, I've usually been a writer on it. And then whenever he's toured, for the last 20 years, I've been his opening act. So, yeah.
That's cool. What have you learned from him, from touring with him?
I learned loads and loads about writing and about being, prolific when you're writing, and just being happy to write rubbish. And also I learned a lot about sort of bravery, just trying stuff that, you're not sure whether it'll work, but just try it anyway. And, so yeah, a lot about sort of writing and bravery, I think, are the two things I probably learned most from him. But I mean, he's just, he's prolific. He lives comedy. He's much more so than me. I sort of feel like, I have a bit of a life where I switch off from comedy. And with Tim, I feel like he's never fully switched off. He's always thinking funny. He's always, aware of funny. If something happens, he's writing it down. Something funny will happen near me, and I don't think anything more about it. Whereas he'll have a postcard and he'll write it down. I'm sort of probably a little bit lazier than Tim in that respect.
Yeah. Are you always looking at life through a comedic lens?
A little bit, but like I say, not so much as Tim. I do have moments where I just switch off, and I'll happily go fishing and not think about magic. I don't go fishing very often. I don't know why I pick fishing. I do it about once a year. But when I'm with a crowd, I'm on. I'm sort of on a lot with a crowd. I do sometimes switch off. I do like to listen a lot when I'm with crowds. But if I'm with a crowd of entertainers, and I almost feel a little bit like I need to self, maybe. I don't know, just, Whereas if I'm with family or non-entertaining friends, then I'm much...
Non-entertaining friends? Don't name drop them. They won't want to know that.
Honestly, there's loads of them, mainly family. But what I mean by that, you know what I mean? People who aren't in the entertainment business.
Yeah.
Then a lot of times, I'll be quiet and I'll listen. I am a mix of introvert and extrovert. I can be quite introverted in certain environments. If I go to a party and it's not start a Magic Live party or it's not a Magic Convention party. If I go to a party and it's just friends and family or whatever,
Muggles,
yeah, maybe not family. I'd be a little bit more vocal with family. But if I just went to a non-magician's party or a wedding, maybe of someone I know vaguely who's been foolish enough to invite me, thinking I'm going to be loud and gregarious. And a lot of times I will sit, I'll listen, I'll be quiet. And that's changed a little bit. When I was, in the early days when I was an amateur, I'd have a pocket full of magic and I'd get my fix by showing people tricks. I'd go, oh, here, look, let me show you something. Whereas now I do it for a living. I get my fix on stage. Regularly, I'm out, every week doing something somewhere. So I don't really need that little injection in my arm of magic fandom.
Yeah.
So I rarely carry magic around with me. If I'm pushed, I'll take a coin off somebody and do something, or I'll borrow a deck of cards. Sometimes I might be persuaded to take a little bit of close-up magic with me and do something in the moment, but it's not something I do a lot anymore, really.
Yeah.
I'm over
so
that.
We have a tradition on this pod For 3 closing questions, you go to a desert island and you're only allowed to take 3 items. What are they?
Well, ukulele would be one. I'd definitely take a ukulele. I love my ukulele. It's in my act a little bit with silly songs and bits and bobs, but when I'm not performing, I just love sort of playing tunes and singing to myself. So I'd have to have my ukulele with me, I think. That would be number 1. Do you want another 2 things I'd take with me? A pillow and a duvet, probably.
Smart. Very smart. You've got to be comfortable on your island.
Yeah, exactly. But if you want something more magically based...
I thought you were going to say meaningful. No, you said
meaningful. Based. Oh, yeah. I'd take a Bible. I'd take... Well, I'd take my iPhone. That's got everything on it, hasn't it? I can have all my books on there.
Now you've gotten up to like 4 or 5 items, so you've maxed out your...
Have I? All right.
Beep, beep, we need that buzzer. Where's your little...
I haven't got a buzzer. You can. Did I show you this? You can. Penn Teller gave me that. Cling.
What keeps you up at night in the best possible way?
Thinking about magic, probably. When I've got a magic problem, or somebody's suggested an idea, or somebody's working on an idea, or I'm working on an idea, then I sort of quite often just lie in bed thinking about it. It's normally what gets me off to sleep. Normally, nearly every night I go to bed and I start thinking about a routine, a problem, and it might be like, right, how could I do that? What are the possible, what things do people write in a book, or what things do people like to carry in a pocket, or how would a mind reader do this, or whatever, or what jokes. So nearly every night I go to bed thinking about that, and sometimes I'll wake up to go to the toilet, as you do when you get to my age, 5 or 6 times an hour. Then I'll get back into bed and I'm thinking about that again until I fall asleep. So I wouldn't say it keeps me awake, but it's what helps me get to sleep.
And then when you wake up in the morning, is there a light shining through your crown chakra and the answer comes like...
Normally the answer comes in the middle of the night, and then I think, right, I must remember that. And then the next morning I do remember it. I do sort of remember,
okay.
Oh yeah, that's an idea. And then it's not quite right. It's sort of half there, and then the next night, it could go on for ages. But quite often, like the last time I was at the Magic Castle, there was quite a few issues with certain tricks. I was thinking, how could I solve that? And I go, well, maybe I could do that, maybe I could do that, maybe I could do that. And then I'm asleep, and I wake up, and maybe I could do that, and then I go, of course, that would work. And then the next day I go, I think about it last night, and you can talk to people who've been with me, and they'll say, yeah. The next morning he often comes up and goes, I was thinking about it last night. I think this might work. So a lot of ideas come to me during the night, during that sort of going to bed period.
Yeah, awesome. And question number 3, if your younger self could watch you today, what would surprise them the most?
He's got no hair, I think, would probably... He'd be very disappointed with that. I used to be quite proud of having hair. But I think I'd be surprised at what I'd achieved. I think I'd be, if my younger self could see me hanging out with some of the people I hang out with, those names I've been dropping all.
Oh my God, such a comedian! Like callback.
Yeah.
On fire, you are.
But it's true. I mean, I've got this imposter syndrome, and I drop these names because they are names to me. They're not. Even though I consider them friends, they're still up there, and I'm still surprised. I'm still amazed that I do get to hang out with them, and they come over and know me and know my name and say, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm going. It shocks me. So I think my younger self would be like, "How did that happen? How who's he paid to get that?" So I think my younger self would be surprised at some of the cool things I do as well. Some of the cool things you get to do when you do this for a living. I don't think. When I started out, I just thought, it'd be nice if I could make a living doing this. I never thought I'd get people calling me things like great comedy magician, and like I say, even now,
It's not just great. Just to clarify that, John, it's not just great. It's one of the UK's best.
Yeah, UK. I mean, it's a small place. There's only about 5 of us, but yeah, I wouldn't have expected that, and I'm still bemused by it all. But I'm happy to take it. I won't throw it back in people's faces.
Good. Amazing. John Archer, it's been an absolute joy to dive into your career and your lessons, and you made me laugh so much. So thank you so much. There was a point where you did. So say it again.
David Copperfield said exactly.
You got any others that you've saved for our last closing moments?
I'm making them up now. I'm just making up.
Thank you, John Archer, the one, the only, the callback master. Actually, the callback wizard is probably more appropriate. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.